uh, was biking around. Leroy, stop. I'm talking about a tender story.
Tom Petty. Tom Petty Project. Tom Petty. Hey, Tom Petty Project.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, my fine friends. You're joining me for a bonus guest episode of the Tom Petty Project podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Brown. A very Merry Christmas to you all. I hope you've all had time to rest and relax and spend some time with friends and loved ones. My family welcomed a brand new addition just last week when my brother and sister-in-law brought Jackson Reed Jacobs into our tribe. I actually had the chance to go over today and have some baby snuggles, which did me the power of good because, you know, who doesn't love holding a shiny new 5-day-old human? Wonderful. Today's episode isn't strictly part of the Guest Ember series, but as I've been busy with family over the past few days, I haven't had a chance to write the episode for Out in the Cold yet, which is the next song we're looking at from Into the Great Wide Open. So this bonus episode is a fairly short conversation I had with the superb Milwaukee-based musician Trapper Schoepp. Real name, just in case you're wondering. We had some technical issues getting started, so we only had a little less than an hour to chat, but it was a fun, fast-paced conversation that I hope you have as much fun listening to as I had being on one side of. Please make sure you check out Trapper's website and his Bandcamp page, where the promo code Wildflowers will get you 40% off anything that Trapper is selling at the moment. I've got a couple of vinyl copies of his last 2 records winging their way to me as we speak, and I can't wait to spin those up once they arrive. Anyway, sit back, relax, and enjoy my rambling conversation with Trapper Schoepp. So first question for you, it is an easy question for you. Is Trapper your birth name, or is that an affectation? I was kind of curious about, because it's an unusual name if it's a real name. So.
You know what's funny is my best friend from college was just here this weekend, and he reminded me of this wild story when we got a noise complaint at my old house, and the cop pulled me aside and he said, "Is this your house?" "Yes." "What's your name?" "Trapper Schoepp." "You're gonna have to, what is your real name?" "Okay, I'm not pulling your leg. Let me go get my ID."
Yeah.
So yeah, if I just flash my ID, that's the easiest way to deal with that question. But yeah, my brother's name is Tanner. My parents were fans of like MASH.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a Trapper John, I think. So it was like in the cultural zeitgeist, maybe the name.
Yeah.
Of course, it's kind of evolved into a whole different thing, the word Trapper. But yeah, dude, real name.
It's a great name for a rock and roll star, right? I mean, that's perfect. You've already got a leg up when you've got a name like that. And so, Schoepp, is that Dutch or German?
German, yeah, OE. So
yeah.
You got it.
I'm brought up in Red Wing, Minnesota, I read. Is that right?
The Boots are from Red Wing Boots, if you've heard of those. And I grew up in Ellsworth, which is famous for the cheese curds we have, the squeaky cheese curds. It's like the pre-cheese white curd, and it's salty, sweet goodness. It is our finest export.
Well, Canadians use that all the time in poutine, right? So, I mean, if there's no cheese curds, there's no poutine. So,
yes, sir. I knew I liked you.
I don't eat it, Trapper. I can't eat the stuff, but
Okay.
But it's about it. Gravy on fries is just not gravy shouldn't go on potatoes as far as I'm concerned. But there we go. So I got sort of hipped onto your music a little bit by some of the stuff you posted, like obviously covering Tom Petty and posting those videos online. But then going back and looking at your catalog, man alive, you've done a lot of music. You've made a lot of records.
I know. I was doing a gig 2 weeks ago with a musician that I'd never played with, and we did like a 3-hour set. And I realized that we didn't play any songs from two of my albums even. And I was like, dude, we had a long ways to go. Yeah, I can't help myself. I always figure if we're turning the mics on to record something, you might as well do 10 to 12 tunes. So
yeah,
I love writing. Tom Petty has been a huge inspiration for me, most notably on my album Primetime Illusion that I did with a great producer named Patrick Sansone, who's helped produce a lot of Petty tribute shows around America, funny enough.
Okay.
So, yeah, he's been a huge inspiration to me since I was a little guy. So
Well, on that album, there's the song "What You Do to Her," and like I said, as soon as I heard that, I was like, "Oh, that's got the same heart and skin as A Mind with a Heart of Its Own," and it's even
yeah,
got some of the Mike Campbell licks in there. Like I was like, "Yeah, this is definitely this is my guy. I can listen to this."
yeah, that album more particular, the day Tom Petty uh passed, I biked down to Lake Michigan and I listened to Walls and Free Fall and all my favorite tunes. I just kind of watched the water ebb flow come back and forth and was thinking of Tom and everything. I got home and I sat at my kitchen table and I wrote Shakedown, which is about a young pilot who is navigating his time in the sky, flying fighter jets along the American border. And then I wrote a song called It's Over. And I wrote both of those tunes with Tom Petty sitting at my kitchen table. So thinking of Tom, everyone always, we miss our rock and roll figures when they leave us, but really they've already left us the best companion they could, and it's their music, their albums. So yeah, he's with me.
Well, there's another comparison that I saw. I found I always look for that, right? You know, when everyone's got influences, and if Petty's an influence, it crops up in different ways. And I'm currently going through the Into the Great Wide Open album right now, and obviously Full Moon Fever before that, and of course that period of Tom's songwriting is marked by Jeff Lynne's production and collaboration. And Jeff Lynne famously does not care about how the song's going to be performed on stage. He works on the song as a contained unit, and then you figure that out afterwards. Now, I find that in a lot of your music is, I don't know that you can play a lot of your stuff as it's recorded on stage because you'd need probably 15 musicians. So it seems you've got that same ethos that, well, I'll write the song and I'll make the song as good as it can possibly be, and then I'll figure out the performance later.
Guess how much I care about the performance.
Not very much, I'm guessing. Yeah.
It's a completely different experience. I mean, it's not even, the musicians that go out and play what they record. That's great. I think it's really cool. It's great for the fan if that's what they want. But if I'm gonna go to a concert, I want to see a musician kind of not just going through the motions. I want to see a musician evolving, changing with the song. Saying that, I saw Tom Petty at Summerfest. This was a show, 2017 tour. Not long before he passed, I was biking around. Leroy, stop! I'm talking about a tender story. I biked around Summerfest, the entryway there, and I was listening to Chris Stapleton play. And I was going to go to the show. I just knew that the folks selling tickets outside, the prices would drop more and more. So I got a $50 ticket, and my buddy had the VIP seats. And he called me up and he's like, dude, just like come with me. I'll use my buddy's VIP ticket. Drew Olson, I love you. 97.3 The Game. Drew, I love you. He's so sweet. And yeah, he did American Girl at the end. I ran up to the stage. I was just like, girl seeing the Beatles, Beatlemania. It was amazing for me. I grew up with Full Moon Fever in my dad's Suburban. I listened to that CD a million times. Tom Petty just feels like a long lost uncle to me, a family member, someone I could just kind of hang with, which I think differentiates him from other rock stars that I might have idolized growing up. But anyway, yeah, his music has always just kind of been in the air. It's always felt like, for lack of a better word, like the furniture in the room. It's a piece of our cultural conversation, and not to get too sidetracked, but this weekend in my basement here, which is kind of a little rock and roll warehouse, this weekend we did this big Christmas party that I've been doing for God, this was the 8th year where me and my friends get together and don't sing Christmas tunes. We sing tunes that are kind of like sad or whatever, and then we make these like really funny booklets, and I'm gonna see if I can find one.
You bet.
Gosh, give me 1 second so I can just show you. Yeah, so we make these silly booklets every year. Like Macaulay was on it one year. This was the second one. Tom Jones was on it one year. This was the virtual year we did. But I bring this up because Tom Petty has always been very featured and loved in these, especially since his passing. So right here is the Tom Petty Memorial, and I will hold it up for your viewers to see. So we did Free Fallin' and Learning to Fly, and it's a caroling event. So me and all my best friends get together. We sing Tom Petty songs. Those who drink and be merry. But yeah, it's just a really wholesome tradition, and it gets to my point of Tom Petty sort of just being a for lack of a better word, a staple, among so many people. We all have these memories of Tom Petty's music, and at that event we went around and everyone in the room talked about like a Tom Petty song that means something to them, or how they got into Tom Petty, a special Tom Petty memory. So that is in a way a little bit different than a lot of again, musicians that I love. Is there's this kind of like bond with his music. He feels like family for whatever reason.
There's a strange thing he has, right? Because he's universal. I mean, I'm not American, but he's very American. But he manages to sort of keep those two things going at the same time. So anybody can appreciate Tom, but he is like, I mean, he played, I think 85, 90% of the gigs he ever played were played in the US. He didn't travel much outside. He talked about, American things quite often, but again, he still had that universality, which I always find very, very interesting when you can do that. I wanted to talk to you because you mentioned your album Primetime Illusion, and the songs, the two Tom Petty songs that you've fully recorded and put out, so Free Fallin' and Walls. I was going to ask you, were they recorded round about those same sessions then?
Yeah, they were like very close. The Free Fallin' one, it is funny. Slightly cliche for a guy to put out a Tom Petty Free Fallin' cover not long after he passes. But I had recorded that song for my friend's wedding because he asked if I could come play his wedding. And I said, unfortunately, I cannot come play your wedding. However, I could go into the studio for a few hours and just record Free Fallin' for you. And then you can just have that. It'll sound better than me being there.
Oh, man.
So we did that instead. And then it turned out well, and we just put it out there. And, when the chorus hits, we kind of come down. I try not to sing up, and that's kind of slightly out of respect for Tom, his passing, his spirit. It's not always about like reaching for the high notes. It's not always about like hitting that peak, hitting that chorus. With Tom Petty, he is a great philosopher, and there's as much wisdom in just one lyric, like learning to fly, ain't got wings, coming down, hardest thing, learning to fly, around the clouds, what goes up must come down. He's such a great like philosopher, and his lines pack so much weight. They're so dense. He has like the economy of words thing down totally. So
but you again though, so do you, Trapper. Again, I mean, I was listening to, because if I think about Damn the Torpedoes to Wildflowers, in terms of Tom's growth as a songwriter, as a musician, as a studio craft person. There's a marked difference between those two albums. And I think there's also a pretty marked difference between, I'm trying to think now, Rangers and Valentines, which was 2016, I think, for you.
Yeah.
And then this last album, Siren Songs, it's almost got the same sort of growth in them, where this last album that you did, Siren Songs, is a lot, it feels more, I won't say introspective exactly, but it's a lot more intimate and personal.
It is. Yes. Yeah, correct. Yes, there's a lot to unpack there. But you look at Tom Petty's work as it evolved on albums like, let's say, Highway Companion.
Yeah.
They're more introspective. He's looking more inward with that music. It brings you into one room with him versus a stadium. So definitely that's what I'm trying to do with my music. I feel like there is a tendency amongst a lot of young artists to like overcook their work and just like,
Yeah.
okay, you can have an orchestra on this. Okay, you can have backup singers on this. And when you're young, all those things seem very exciting. And the older I get, the more I'm interested in how can we take, a very simple line, like Tom Petty has done. How can we do something really simply? And that's something he was so great at. Of course, Wildflowers. The famous story is, you know it, I know it, your listeners know it. He sat down and it just came out of him. He was what did they say, like a conduit for it. He was just like a medium for the song. And honestly, that happens a lot, and it's for me, that kind of thing does happen quite a bit.
Yeah.
Of course, they're not hit songs, but that sort of thing does happen. I don't think it maybe is as magical as you might think. It's like you're just working your subconscious and training it to go down certain paths. And he was just a master. He was the guru. He was the absolute philosopher of rock, which is why he's in the Traveling Wilburys. Like the youngest Wilburys. So
it is cool. There is that sort of, when you're a professional musician or when you're a songwriter, I think part of that is learning to trust, this feels right, and I'll go with this now, rather than, like you said, trying to force it and say, oh, maybe I could do this and do this. Well, stick to the song first and let the song show itself. And I like songwriters that put little moments into their songs. And I was thinking about on your album, on Siren Songs, this last album, there's a super little tasty piano solo in 7 Mile Fair. Or there's the female vocal on Annalie, but it's just at the end. So you get that female harmony vocal just at the end, and you only use it in that one spot. So it gives you this little moment in this song, and there's lots of those peppered through Tom's career, and I'd say like someone like John Prine and Todd Snyder. They do the same things, right? Where they try and find interesting ways to move songs along without them being overdone and overproduced and overworked, like you said.
Hats off to Patrick Sansone. Again, he is a brilliant producer. His work with Wilco is obvious, but he has been on so many projects throughout the years, working with artists like Robin Hitchcock and Emma Swift were just two things that came to mind that were most recent. But he is incredible, and he's like a total scholar of song. Get him talking about Elvis, get him talking about Tom Petty, get him talking about any artist, like new wave. We can go like ambient, we can go British folk music. He is just a textbook for this stuff.
Right.
And that's the kind of people I like working with, that are more not fans necessarily, but they really appreciate music, and they love how artists like a Jeff Lynne or whatever would really kind of look at a song like this sculpture that they can really work nicely and pepper in those little things.
So does that then, when you go into the studio with someone like that, does that change how those songs evolve then? Like, are you sort of editing on the fly in the studio while you're bouncing ideas off your
Yeah,
producer, or do you come in with things pretty fully formed and you know how they sound in your head?
I would say every song is just different, truly. You
Yeah.
never, um, like on my album that we just did, I went in with that song Secrets of the Breeze and I played it like really quiet finger style. And then I played it for the guys like that. And then maybe I had an espresso or something. And then I said, you could also do it like this. And I played it in a more lively Irish sort of water boys sort thing. And we went in there and it probably took 15 minutes and we had the,
Jeez Louise.
you know what I mean? Like if you find the people that work in the studio, find the musicians that you share a language with,
Yeah.
it's pretty easy to just find something, find the groove or whatever. My songwriting is rooted in a, the tradition of songwriters like Tom Petty and folk musicians like Bob Dylan before me. So I'm not necessarily reinventing the wheel, right? I'm just like adding a very small chain to this never ending, you know?
Yeah, but it's influenced by all those people, but it's still, and that's the
Yeah,
thing. That's the trick with a really good artist. Is it still still got to sound like you? Because if you're trying
yeah,
to sound like someone else, then it just doesn't fly right. Then it's a rip off, and then it's boring. Like you said, I want to hear someone's original voice. So talking of Dylan though, that's interesting because it brings me on Wisconsin, and I'm really curious how the heck that turned about. So maybe tell my listeners what that
yeah.
song is, where it came from.
Well, when Bob Dylan was 20 years old, he was a ragamuffin guy trying to figure out where he fit in. And he went to Madison, Wisconsin, where he saw Woody Guthrie perform in the flesh for the very first time. And, or sorry, Pete Seeger. And
Okay.
that gave him the gusto to go out to New York City. And he met these guys in the Union at the school in Madison. And he took a ride out to New York City and he slept on couches and floors and played harmonica for pennies and cups of soup for a few months or whatever he did. Got a deal with Columbia Records. And on the day he went into the recording studio to begin work on his first album, he wrote a song about Wisconsin, which was his last stop for New York. And it's this beautiful tune, very simple. It's like a Woody Guthrie folk song. It's like, yeah, Wisconsin is a dairy state. Guess you all know it well. I was in the war with Tulsa, the truth I will tell. So it's just very simple. Like this
Yeah.
is where I sort of folk tune. And it didn't make the cut on that first studio album. And then 57 years later, I was scrolling through Facebook and I saw this article that said $30,000 for Bob Dylan, Wisconsin lyric sheets, auction, yada, yada, yada. I was like, well, I can't afford that, but I could probably finish the song. So I finished the song. I put it out there on the World Wide Web. And I nudged my manager who lived in LA to throw out some Hail Mary passes. And eventually we got the man to hear it. And we got an agreement in place. And I published the song with Bob Dylan, a song about Wisconsin that I finished that he started nearly 6 decades before. So yeah, pretty cool. A co-writing credit with Bob, which I'm sure Tom Petty has himself from the Wilburys. So,
But not many people do though, right? Because Dylan wrote so much on his own that he didn't usually need anyone else to co-write with him. But it was fun too because the video for that song, I wanted to ask you about how that came along because there's a lot of faces in
Wisconsin.
that video, and I mean, I was like, hey, that's Butch Vig. I know that guy.
Yeah. So it's a lot of people with Wisconsin roots who you
Yeah.
might not know they had Wisconsin roots. Musicians ranging from the Violent Femmes, Victor DeLorenzo, to the lead singer of the Bodines, Kurt Newman, to as you mentioned, Butch Vig, and then we have in there all sorts of like film stars, Mark Borchardt, who did a famous movie called American Movie, I believe is the name, he's my neighbor, and just a lot of great friendly neighborhood Wisconsin people. So
Okay, so I wanted to ask you about that too, then, because obviously, you know, well, obviously, but the thing to do if you're an aspiring rock and roller is to move to LA. But you stayed. Wisconsin is home for you. What's the
so expensive and so hot and so many desperate people there. No offense.
Yeah.
It's cool. I love it. I love California. I love all the neighborhoods in LA are really fun. It's just pretty expensive and secluded from the rest of America. It's just a long haul to get out there.
Cool. Okay, well, I've got two other things about your music I wanted to ask you. Bay Beach Amusement Park. When I tripped over that one, I was like, this is surf rock, and this is just like it's almost like
it's kids music slightly, you know. Dude, look, I grew up worshiping Woody Guthrie and all this stuff. I'm not above making a 50s rockabilly tribute to an amusement park.
Yeah.
Whatsoever. I will do that. It's silly. It passes the time. We were going through a very difficult moment politically in America. And I just wanted to do something that was left turn. But still the songs have their universal quality. They're not obviously just about amusement park rides. It's all metaphor.
Of course.
Stuff. But yeah, that was a fun album, and we made these really great shirts that say "This isn't fun anymore" on them. I could grab one right now and show you. We made those, and because it's a lyric from one of the songs. There was a little boy on the amusement park ride screaming, "This isn't fun anymore! Stop the ride!" And we made these terrific T-shirts, which I'll show you. And you can get them on my website, trapperschoepp.com, or my Bandcamp or whatever. But it is like the best T-shirt ever. You know, and during the pandemic, you know, the thing really supported us and kept us going because people all over the world started buying them and kind of applying it to whatever their situation was, and then they'd take the picture and put it on Instagram.
Yeah, but so you've got. I mean, okay, so you got that. That's 2017. You did that album, or is it album or EP? I'm never sure. What's the cutoff between an album and an EP? I'm never sure.
Yes, it's like 8 or 10 songs. This is an album, so
you got that, and then you've got like a song like Freight Train, which is, you know, it's a cover, but it's this really sort of upbeat thing where you are pushing your voice and you are stretching. Then we get to your latest single, Long Black Veil, which is the complete polar opposite of that, where it's a lot more of it kind of, for me, it sits in that same place as Billy Austin by Steve Earle or I Hung My Head by Sting, where it's this sort of epic tragedy, this Shakespearean tragedy about this guy who takes the hit and well, I mean, maybe tell the story of what the song's about for my listeners.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't know the song, it's an old country song by Lefty Frizzell, and it's about a man. It's about a love triangle that has gone south. One man was with his best friend's lady, which is not cool for those of you listening, thinking about it. And the best friend's lady, and there is a murder, and he is framed that he's the murderer. And even though he has an alibi with his best friend's wife, he would rather be dead than his best friend know that he slept with his wife. So a definite tragic tale, but Johnny Cash did a famous version of it, and we just did an album down at Johnny Cash's cabin where Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers recorded a bunch of songs with Johnny in the kitchen. Okay, so they have expanded this whole studio now out. But Tom and Johnny recorded a bunch in the kitchen where we made our coffee and at our Cliff Bars, and there was a drummer, John Radford, recorded the drums in the kitchen, but they've expanded since. But let me tell you, there is a true atmosphere in that room.
I was
No
going to
doubt.
I was going to ask about that because I've talked to people about that before. About if you go into the big room at Abbey Road and you sit down at that piano, a million songs have been recorded on. Of course, it's just an instrument, and it's not imbued with any sort of psychic thing. But I think that when you go into a space like that with the weight of the history of what's happened in that room, it's going to inspire you to play differently or see things differently. So it's got that impact, I think, right?
Yes. If it didn't, I would be slightly concerned you were a psychopath. You know what I mean? Like if you just didn't recognize that history. Yeah, it was a remarkable experience. And if you listen to the album, it sounds as if you're kind of in this cabin with five people, all telling these stories, all trying to communicate something. And it feels cohesive because we all just sat in the same spots. Patrick Sansone played June's piano, her upright piano. So he sat there, he played that the whole record. I sat in the little fish isolation booth with Johnny's 1930s shit kicker guitar, and they called it the shit kicker because Johnny had passed his guitar on to friends for his whole life. His friends would play it, and one night he had friends by that were trying out new tunes, and he passed this guitar over from Bob Dylan, who had tried Lay Lady Lay for the first time, to Joni Mitchell, who did Both Sides Now for the first time, to Chris Christopherson, who did Me and Bobby McGee, and last but not least, Shel Silverstein did A Boy Named Sue. And then they said, Trapper, do you want to try this guitar? There's nothing left of this thing. No, there's plenty of DNA and dust left on it for me. But yeah, man, just a cool experience. What more is there to say? Inspired and beautiful experience down at Johnny's place.
So can I ask you, who does your artwork for all your singles? Do you?
It's just whoever I feel inspired to connect with on a certain project.
Because that single cover for Long Black Veil is stunning. Like it's so epic. Yes.
I'm actually texting the photographer right now. So give it up to Lucian McGaffey. He does a lot of commercial work in the Milwaukee area, but so I don't mess up his name. It's Lucian MCAFEE, and he actually was in a couple big Hollywood movies as well. But he has a very keen eye for photography and big dramatic things, and actually working on a bunch of really cool photos right now, which is not something that I ever thought I would be all that interested in. But he is a great photographer and he gets these kind of wacky ideas, and so do I. And I'm like, what if we, and he has the cameras and the experience to pull it off. So yeah, I've great collaborators in Milwaukee. It's a good place.
It's also, because like I said, all your album covers are striking in one way or another. They've all got their own personality, and they sort of, in most ways, they capture the sense of the album. So I think it's always nice when you meet the right people to be able to bring that sort of vision to life, right? So, okay, well, shall we get into some 10 questions, some Tom Petty questions? All right.
Yeah.
So again, it's always the worst question for any fan is, if you have to pick only one album, what's your favorite Tom Petty album? Full Moon Fever?
Done.
Just because of the size and scale of it, or
is it neat that It's just all hits. Every song's a hit.
Zombie Zoo.
No comment.
Okay, Mudcrutch or the Traveling Wilburys.
Wilburys, hands down.
So did you ever see Mudcrutch perform
I
or
did not. No, I've never seen them. And honestly, I don't know much of it.
Yeah.
So I'm a Wilburys guy though, for sure.
I'm always curious about like the American listeners, right? I mean, everyone knows Bob and everyone knows George and everyone knows Tom, but
Right.
Jeff Lynne, like I wonder because that Jeff Lynne
Well,
sort of
I'm a
the
yellow guy, so I really love
okay.
you. So that band is actually all of my favorite things put together. It's really silly and fun music.
Well, and Roy Orbison. I mean, good God, one of the greatest voices of all time, hands down.
Good.
Okay, if you could join the Heartbreakers on stage for one song, what would it be? And would you play and sing or play or sing?
I just want to strum along. Just strum along to something like Learning to Fly, easy, windshield wiper, just real in the background, fly on the wall.
I've never heard that expression before, windshield wiper. I'm going to remember that one. Okay, who would you be your dream opening act at a Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers concert?
Dream opening act. Interesting. Like John Prine or something. It'd be cool. Just something different, but like Howie out there with him. And Howie's brother actually lives in Milwaukee, and he gave me and my brother one of Howie's old leather jackets that he wore to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and stuff. I don't have that with me, unfortunately, but I could send you a photograph and you're welcome to post it.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, I mean, again, that album, The Missing Years, John Prine's album, The Missing Years, that Howie did, is
Yeah.
another phenomenal. But I came to John Prine very, very late. There you go. See, yeah.
Showing off my cool Tom Petty.
Yeah, no, Prine, I grew up in England. John Prine just didn't land, didn't make a mark. He didn't sort of make any noise over in the UK. So when I discovered his catalog, I'd say probably about 6 months before he passed. Again,
Yeah.
it's this great American songwriter with this massive catalog of I just like hit after hit after hit. It's like, man, this guy, how many words does this guy have? They just flew out of him, you know.
Many. He has many words.
Okay. Favorite band member other than Tom?
And
Okay, why? Because that's always interesting when people say Ben rather than Mike. I'm always curious.
Crawling Back to You.
The piano intro. Yeah, it's something else. When you watch that Wildflowers documentary and you see Ben Mont just sitting at the piano playing, and he can play stride piano and he can jam out, he can play anything you want, he can play boogie woogie, whatever you want. But just to strip that right back and pull it all back, just to play only exactly as many notes as need to be played. It's that I say is that economy thing that you were referencing earlier. I always love it too.
Yep.
So if you could go to see any Tom Petty concert from history, one that you weren't at, obviously, which one would you pick?
Live Aid.
Okay.
And I didn't even see these questions. I printed them off, but I forgot them. I'm getting straight A's though. Live Aid, just because that was my first exposure to Tom Petty when he was dressed in that goofy suit and cool. So I'd go for that.
Well, I suppose too, it's a good hack because then you get a whole bunch of other artists as well, right? It's a good. Okay, so you've recorded Walls, but which is your favorite version, Walls Circus or Walls number 3?
With Lindsey Buckingham.
Walls Circus, which is interesting because I was gonna comment on that though, Trapper, because obviously your version of Walls is again very stripped back. It's quite mellow and it's just got that sense of it, but you use the lyric from the Circus version. You know, I'm going to get you back someday. You use that line instead of the one from Walls number 3, which is I'm coming back someday, which again, that one line, it changes the whole meaning of the whole verse. But so I was kind of interested in the fact that you did it in more of a stripped back arrangement, but with the big line.
You know, that's one of those songs that I feel like I've listened to so much I don't even have to listen to it anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like those early Bob Dylan tunes, like On Times They Are Changing and all that. I mean, it's just like I I feel like it's like Tom Petty's music. It's just in the air we breathe.
It's do you ever too get that sense of when you listen to something like Walls or Refugee or The Waiting or some of those songs, or you listen to Dylan like Highway 61 or Ballad of a Thin Man, you think, how does one person write something that freaking good, man? Like it's just like Highway 61 Revisited is an album, and this is not obviously, hey, we're Petty adjacent, it's Bob Dylan. That album, when I put that on, when I put it on my vinyl turntable, every single time it blows my mind that one guy wrote all those songs and recorded them in what, like 2 days?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he read the Bible, he read Shakespeare, he grew up with a wild fascination, and he wanted to say something. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, did it.
Okay, if you could pick any artist to cover any Tom Petty song, who would it be and what song would they cover?
You know, what would be cool is like Warren Zevon doing some Tom Petty. I don't know what specifically, but maybe like some stripped down version of Refugee, say, or maybe like one of those big hits like Won't Back Down. Warren just has, he can like bring you into a very intimate small space. I feel like could do well with those tunes.
Yeah, someone else, I can't remember who it was, but one of my other guests said Warren Zevon. I think someone else name checked him as well for that exact same reason. So, there's a current in the air there. So what song do you most frequently recommend to people who don't know Tom's music?
Everyone knows his music, right? I will go back to Full Moon Fever. I think it's his like most iconic statement as an artist, and I think he knows that as well, which is why he plays those tunes. Everyone loves them.
Yeah. Well, when Free Falling comes on, even though, as you said, it's like Walls, you've heard it a million times. It's just imprinted in your brain, but you never turn it off.
Yep.
Because you always want to hear Free Falling, right?
Correct.
Okay, so describe Tom Petty in 3 words.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before. Well, he has attitude. Attitude is number one. I love that. It's like stands up for the little man. He has attitude. He has this philosophical quality to his music, this like understated, simple, philosophical bedrock, for lack of a better way of saying it. His songs have a lot of sage wisdom and advice within them. So I'd say like philosopher. And he just rocks. Tom Petty rocks. So that one for the big final 3.
Well, that isn't important too, right? Because when you go out and you're going to an arena tour, a stadium tour, you want to bring the energy up. I've never understood like going seeing, I don't know, like I'm going to drop a name that is probably unfair, but someone like Chantal Kreviazuk, I'm sure is amazing live, but in an arena setting now, I want energy. That's why I've seen Foo Fighters 4 times, and say what you like about Dave Grohl's a live vocalist. That band, it's a party atmosphere in that room when you're in the room with those 5-6 guys. It's insane,
Yeah.
And I never saw Tom Petty live, but I've heard everyone says that they just put on a fantastic show. So was that the only time you saw him then? Was 2017?
2017, and then it was like a few months later he passed, and that made such a wild imprint on me, his passing. And then my band got offered to do a bunch of Tom Petty tribute shows, so we'd do like 45 minutes of our music and then do like an hour and a half of the hits.
Yeah.
And that's something I would love to do more of. So listeners out there, you're gonna have a 50th birthday coming up. Why not have the greatest Tom Petty tribute band there ever was? What are we calling it? We said Petty adjacent.
There you go.
That'd be perfect. And I can sprinkle some of my tunes that Tom inspired early on, and then we'll do the hits.
But I mean, most of your music, or a hell of a lot of your music, fits within it anyway, right? Because it's like you said, it's got so many of the same bones that if you're going to play one of your tracks and then play a Tom song, it's not going to be jarring. If you're going to play like, I don't know, Settling or Sleeping Around, a Lost Cowboy from Raisin Valentine's, that fits, that'll work.
Yeah, man.
was going to say too, on that album, I was listening to Talking Girlfriend Blues, which I love because it's that nod back to Bob Dylan, but it's the thing that are you a Todd Snyder fan? Do you listen to Todd Snyder at all?
I love Todd Snyder. I think he is fantastic.
Yeah, and so it's got that sense to it, right? Because he adds in a little bit to Dylan's old blues kind of things that he used to do. So
Yeah.
I noticed, are you going on tour in Europe coming up very
Yes,
soon?
so come on out and see me. First I don't know when this airs, but I'm doing scattered dates around the Midwest. Like if you live in Chicago, Minneapolis, Milwaukee, Madison, that area, I play all the time. So just find me on whatever social media if you want to be friends, and I play all the time. And I try to go to Europe once a year if possible. And yeah, we're going to Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, Sweden in March. So come and find me there.
Do you enjoy that? Do you like being on the road?
Yeah, I love it. We're actually going to do one Tom Petty tribute in Sweden. Um, I don't know how to pronounce the name of the venue. But that will be very fun in Sweden. So
Awesome, man. And any more albums coming up? You seem to be able to knock them out.
I'm working on something that's a little more country inspired. Right now I'm just writing right now, and I see something off down at the end of the street, but I'm just moving slowly and with caution. Um, but I have some dates, studio dates sort of booked. So yeah, you know what I mean, though. You kind of have to have a deadline to work towards.
Yeah, I certainly do. Yeah. And I noticed too when I was on your website looking, and we should tell people go to Trapper's website. You got vinyl on there because I'm a vinyl nerd. That's always like, okay,
I have a ton in my basement too. So if you want to come like just straight up, I can just buy the bucket load. Yeah, I get some vinyl. For all your listeners too, we'll do like a 40% deal on my Bandcamp. We'll say Wildflowers is a discount code. So 40% off, and you'll get all my different vinyl on my Bandcamp for a nice discount. So
fantastic. Okay, well, it's been an absolute blast, sir.
Yeah, what more could I possibly share? We've talked about the jacket. We've talked about this fantastic shirt, which is actually a cutoff.
Oh, nice.
Kind of sick. It's from the
True confession story, yeah.
So yeah, whenever I see Bob or like Tom Petty stuff out in the wild, my partner works in vintage too. It is a secure immediately sort of situation. So
it's always nice when you do happen across, and I don't happen across it very often in Saskatoon, but when you see someone else wearing Tom Petty stuff, there's just that quick little, hey, nice, like, everyone just the thumbs up or whatever. It connects you straight away, right? So
yeah.
But I would say to my listeners too, please do go check out everything that Trapper's put out, because I've fallen into this. But yeah, it was about 4 weeks ago. I connected with you and said, hey, do you want to come on the podcast? Through a friend who had said, hey, you got to get Trapper on. So I was like, okay, well. And diving into your catalog, there's so much there. There's so many different looks. There's so many different ideas and styles and different, instrumentation. You play, like there's like strings on this, and there's like a penny whistle or something like the Irish thing. And it's like, what does this guy not use? Like, is there's everything on there?
Why not?
Yeah.
I have a great time. And I will say, let it be said, Tom Petty's music is a good time. And as much as it is very deep and has all these philosophical layers, you put on Damn the Torpedoes and you could like drive a car across the country. You know what I mean? It's like so uplifting and spiritual, and has these beautiful elements to it. So thank you, Tom Petty, for the gift of song you've given us all. We love you.
Yeah, and thanks to you for keeping real music alive too, because it sometimes feels in modern music that we're losing guitars and we're losing more than 3 chords and we're losing some of that stuff. So I think artists like you putting this sort of music out and doing it well, it's always a joy for us older people who think that music's maybe dying. So because it isn't.
Yeah, totally. Totally. It's still happening. So we'll see you out on the road.